So, I like this picture, right? Cognitive changes, the way they think, the thought processes, all right? So, the chapter overview again. So, development of the brain in adolescence. You know that our brain keeps developing until mid-20s at least, right? Okay, so it's not set yet. Then how adolescents think, that's the most important part of today's class, okay? Then explaining how those cognitive development has occurred, and then implications for the classroom and so for everyday life too, right? So that's the more important part that I would like to spend more time with, okay? So, brain. It's important. I need to have my brain to teach this class too, so it's important. But I'm not going to go over it too much because it's about more how the brain parts are, how it's related to information processing and stuff, all right? Like cell proliferation, synaptic pruning and stuff. All right, I'm not going to worry about it too much. And then we already talked about early mature versus late maturers, and then puberty. And then that way you can see that change in gray matter density in different regions in the brain. Girls tend to hit little area than boys, again, just the way the biologically we are different. All right. Those two, these are like chapter 3 in Psych 101 book. So I'm not going to go over that. All right, axon and then synapse, okay, stuff, which I'm not going to talk about. Nope. But I like it because this one, especially multitasking. How many of you multitask? Everybody does. Requires switching from one activity to another. So activities are not done as well as when done alone. That's what some researchers claim. And then, yes, sometimes that's true if they require more attention, like the tasks are more difficult or, more complicated, but it's a simple tasks. I don't think so, all right? So example, using a cell phone while driving, all right? Because depending on how you do it too, though, because not only using a cell phone, some people eat, some people talk on the phone, or some people put the makeup on. Different tasks depending on how much effort you're making to do one or the other, right? Okay, so I think it depends on the context and the content too. All right, so adolescent thinking may be abstract, hypothetical, or logical. You learned about Piaget theory from chapter 1 and 2, right? And also, we talked about different theories and different researchers and then psychologists, and also from Psych 101 class too. We talked about adolescent thinking, childhood thinking, and how the brain develops and in terms of cognitive development. So abstract thinking allows classification outside of physical characteristics. So, for example, animals may be classified by their appearance or by where they live or by a combination. So the kids know the difference between, let's say, dolphins and dogs. Do they? Yes. Dolphins don't live like every dogs. We see many dogs as pets. But do we see dolphins as pets? No. We have to go to aquarium or SeaWorld or ocean, right? So they can classify that, the differences, right? And then we have different types right there. But hypothetical thinking in terms of what might be allows adolescents to solve problems. And as the frontal cortex develops, adolescents can limit impulsive behavior and monitor their activity too, getting ready for adulthood, right? Okay. So metacognition is the awareness of one's thinking, cognitive abilities, and style too. Everybody has different learning styles, and you know which one is working better for you than the other. That's how we recognize our strengths and weaknesses. Everybody has strengths and then weaknesses. But then we try to focus on the positive side, right? So you can move along and then you can get more. So logical thinking allows adolescents to see logical relations among ideas too. So they can use logical consistency to evaluate their thoughts. So for example, an experimenter uses a poker chip to ask if a statement is true or untrue, and adolescents can answer whether the chip is seen or unseen. Make sense? Okay, good. So, emerging adults ask, all right, well, I'm middle-aged now, but adolescents differ in their thinking. Sometimes they overlap, okay? But adolescents may be logical, but adults may be more practical and consider which logical options are available, all right? So, for example, an employee arrives late again after being told he would be fired. So I have to tell you this example. Here's this gentleman who came to me after the first week was passed. Second week he showed up and he said to me after class, I was not here last week. And I said, you're fired. And he was like this. I said, well, you didn't contact me as a professor why you didn't come to class first week. And if it was a work relationship and you just showed up and then told the boss that I was not here last week, you think you still have a job here? No. So let's think about it. College is college. It's like business. You pay tuitions, you come, right? And you learn. So we adults try to be more practical, right? And what's more accepted in college or not, right? But adolescents tend to be less practical because lack of experiences, right? Maybe he thought that it's okay, it's school, it's not work, but college is like the place that you're gonna be prepared for real world, real society, right? So not only me teaching psychology, but basic skills to survive in the real world. Then I have to teach them, okay, if you didn't contact me, you just showed up as if nothing was wrong, something's wrong here. If it was a business setting, you're fired. You don't have a job to do, right? Okay, so like that. All right. Also, emerging adults have more tolerance for ambiguity too. We try to be. So they know the facts may actually be interpretations by a group and that each perspective can be a legitimate point of view. We respect the differences. We respect other people's opinions. You might respectively disagree with other people's opinions. That's fine, okay? More likely to work toward a solution than to try to find the right answer. Kids tend to be arguing with adults, right? Or my kids, 3 of my kids, they argue and they always think that one is right and the one is wrong. I said, wait a second. And I try to teach them from young age that, okay, he says this, but then what if you are in your sister's position and then she says this? I say, what if you are in your brother's position? Think about it. And they kind of think about it, and they understand that point, but they repeat again because they're young, they forget. But we try to teach them to listen and understand the different situations. What if that's difficult for them to understand, because what if is abstract thinking, but sometimes that's the direct way to teach them. Like for instance, if Max says something like, your sister was annoying, and then she keeps bothering me. I said, what if you keep bothering her? And she says, no, but you keep doing that. You think she'll like that? No, because you don't like that if someone does that to you. That's right. Right? So try to explain, but it's not always right, wrong answers either. So a constructive perspective assumes that individuals must interpret all experience. Events remain ambiguous until responded to. So for instance, Noam Chomsky's statement, he's at MIT, he's a famous researcher, flying planes can be dangerous, is ambiguous yet will be responded to according to individual experience. So if you're on the airplane, you had turbulence, then you might feel it's not safe, right? But you have never had those experiences, you might say planes are not that dangerous because we didn't have any bad experiences before. But whenever we see the news, the plane went down, we all feel like, oh no, maybe we shouldn't even travel by airplane. So it depends, right? Okay. But they try to logically explain constructive perspective is. Then Jean Piaget suggested a constructive perspective that varies with developmental age. So his focus was age differences, stages, okay? So we construct what we know of the world. It's a physical world, okay? So we organize the understanding in different ways with age, resulting in a different stage of thought and the equilibrium with the environment, okay? I think I have the examples here. So assimilation and accommodation, basically. Assimilation meaning new events and experiences are processed to fit existing cognitive structures, all right? On the other hand, accommodation, cognitive structures are altered to fit new events or experiences. Which one is easier for us to do? Assimilation or accommodation? Do you remember social psych class from the Psych 101? Cognitive dissonance. Do you remember that? What does it mean? Yes?
Cognitive dissonance means that what you think doesn't necessarily agree with your action.
Exactly right. So think about that assimilation and accommodation. Isn't that close to what you just explained? So some experiences you had, let's see, I'll bring it as an example. I'm an Asian immigrant, but I have been in this country longer than I was born and raised in Japan now. So I came here as an international student. I had both assimilation and accommodation as an Asian immigrant, right? New events, experiences, my college life in the United States, international student. What's up? My hands are up, sky is up. So different from moving from one culture to the other, I was born and raised in Japanese. I had cultural customs, but I have to modify that based on my new culture that I live in. So I use both assimilation and accommodation, right? So it's easier with which way. If you or me coming from different culture, living in a different culture, which one is easier than the other?
Accommodation would make it more convenient for you to be here but I don't know if it would be easier.
All right. Assimilation meaning new events and experience the process to fit existing. So you don't have to change much. You just kind of, okay, that's how it works. But then I know that already. That's fine, I can handle that. This one, you kind of have to change your cognition to fit with the new experiences. So you might have this, let's say, what's the big difference between America and Japan? Like respecting elderly people. I had a hard time calling my professors with their first name. I felt like, no, I can't call you with first name. I feel like I'm not respecting you. Because in my culture, respect authority, respect elderly people. Then I eventually started calling my professors with first name because they insisted so much. Then, although I didn't feel comfortable, I started calling their first names. That's accommodation. But assimilation. Some of my professors love the idea that I don't call with their first name. I'm very close, but I still respect them. Call doctor or professor, blah, 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 and they like it. That's more like assimilation. I don't change, but still have respected way of communicating. But then I see other people preferring me to call their first names, although they're in the higher position. Do you see the difference? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So different, but I think it's changing our thought processes is a little harder than putting the information to accommodate with what we have known already. Make sense? Okay. So let's think about that. So changes are harder for anybody, young or adult or old. But if you have problems with something that's happening, and if you don't need to change the way you are, but just try to behave differently, although your beliefs are the same, maybe it's easier. But then if you have to completely change the way you believed in, that might be harder to do. Make sense? Okay. Then that happens a lot with adolescents because they don't know who they are yet. Even young adults too, right? Okay? So, to maintain equilibrium for each assimilation, accommodation must occur. So Piaget called this equilibration the process responsible for growth of thought. It's just the way it is we have to deal with, all right? Then Robert Kagan says, or indicated, intellectual growth takes place through a differentiation of self from other. So the process defines new aspects of one's surroundings as well as of one's self. So giving meaning to an event in the world also changes one's sense of self in relation to the event. So the good example was 9/11. Although you are not directly, there in New York City, but you got affected by what happened. You started thinking about yourself, others, right? Okay, those events can change how you think yourself and others, and then how you to interpret the events around you. So Piaget's test of conservation demonstrates whether children know that things remain the same even when they appear different. Moving between perspectives, older children use the processes of negation and reciprocity to give their words stability. So you have seen the TV shows or commercials, right? Phase 1, do they have the same amount of orange drink or the different amount? The same, because the glass is the same size, same height. But now watch what I do, pouring contents of one glass. Although it's the same amount, kids will say, taller one has more than the short one. Right? Although it's the same amount, yes.
Is that pre-operational thinking?
Yes, it's pre-operational. Excellent. They can't see it. All the kids will understand. It's just the different shape, but the amount is the same because it came from the same, but in the different glasses, right? But the younger kids cannot differentiate, okay? I mean, the concept is not there yet. Then contextual perspective. Vygotsky and Rogoff believe cognitive development is shaped by culture. So knowledge is acquired in a social context, and others' discoveries are passed along as social tools. So it's an interaction with social world. Piaget's was more physical world, but Vygotsky, social interaction with others, which I think it makes more sense. And the sad thing is that Vygotsky's theory was not spotlighted until recently. But then his theory makes much, much more sense to us. The funny thing is, okay? So Vygotsky considers the adolescent as part of a group with distinct cultural tools. So thinking develops as a person internalizes these tools, and as such is a social process. So an adolescent must be close enough to obtain cultural tools in the zone of proximal development, all right? Then Rogoff regards the use of cultural tools as an apprenticeship in thinking. So that suggests an activity that is shared with others and guides practical action. So strategies for learning involve observation and participation in what is variable to a particular culture. So like siblings, right? Older kids helps younger kids building the blocks. So Piaget's theory says kids can see the different shapes of those blocks, but they don't have the concept of conservation yet. That's it. But Vygotsky and Rogoff says, no, that's not that simple. If someone is around the child who knows more than the little child, they can teach them how to use the blocks. We model the behaviors. It's social interactions. So older kids, they might teach the little kids how to use it, or little kids just observe what older kids are doing, whether older kids are teaching them. Still, there is a social interaction there. Modeling behaviors. Observation is there. That influences how the little children think. That's what they are talking about. And it makes more sense to me too, as a psychologist. Right? Okay. All right. Psychometric approach. It's about intelligence. Focuses on individual differences in abilities contributing to intelligence. So one can profit from experience. Sense experience approach can adapt to surroundings, okay, like street smart, okay, often involves abstract reasoning. That's more higher thought process, okay? But it's like a triangle. So intelligence tests reflect how one performs relative to others the same age. Maybe standardized test is like this. However, people with different experiences will fare differently depending on which questions are included. Okay. So IQ. What is the average IQ score? 100. It's because of the chronological age, okay, mental age. Mental age is divided by chronological age and then multiplied by 100. So if 10-year-old boy has 10-year-old mentality, then that boy has 100 IQ. But if the boy's mental age is higher, like 13, although his chronological age is 10, his IQ is considered as 130. Makes sense? That's how they basically calculate it, okay?
How do they figure out their mental age?
We do the testing, yeah, and see like abstract thinking or, shapes, different ways of scaling it. And reaction time to how they get to the point quicker than the other kids. So like different types of testing. So what was the name of the other one? Anyway, WISC I-14 is intelligence scale for children and adolescents up to 16. And then 3 is an intelligence scale for adolescents and adults. I teach abnormal psych class. We talk about those two as a tool, assessment tool. So we are focusing on children or adult. We just use a different version of an intelligence test. Okay, yes?
Can you take any one of these tests online?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was so funny. A long time ago, I did the online IQ test. First one, I just did it very quick. Boom, 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 boom. My IQ score was 132. Then the second time I took time on purpose, then my IQ score got 127. That was lower than the first one. The first one was like I took only 2 minutes to do everything. The second one I took like 10 minutes to just do it, right? Took time. You can do it. But reaction time is another one of the key elements that they test for you. So intelligence tests are arbitrary because they drew on one's capabilities and also knowledge gained from living in a culture. So adolescents from a minority who have exposure to the dominant culture will do better than those with no exposure. The nature of the question can affect performance measures too. So depends on the content of the test. It's like a cookie cutter, and then it's like standardized test if you know the stuff from school, and they tend to score higher. But it doesn't mean that you are very smart to make decisions for real life situations. That can be questionable, depending on the experience that you had. Okay, so different intelligence. So example of a type of item in the picture arrangement subtest of the Watcher's test, intelligence test, a previous version of the WISE-2, like those. So you see those pictures, all right? That's interesting. And you know what? At my youngest child daycare, they have kind of not this type of drawing, but the similar one. And she has to place in the right order. So it's interesting to watch. You know, they're testing this one too. It's like a right order, like they have bait right there and then fishing gear right there, and then there are 2 people there, and then it's like going into shed to get the shovel. You see that? The pattern? Okay. That's so interesting. I just saw the computer at my daughter's daycare. That's have very similar testing. I'll check on that. All right. Gender differences do exist in patterns of performance, but not in overall intelligence. To me, it's more gender stereotypes. Females score higher on measures of verbal fluency, written comprehension, and logical relations. On the other hand, males do better on information and arithmetic subtests and tests for spatial ability. So males tend to score higher on math than females, but females tend to score higher on verbal reasonings or verbal comprehension than males. But it doesn't mean that males always score higher on math than females, and female scores always higher than males on verbal or reasoning. Because there are some differences biologically to begin with, but some people, some females are much more interested in math and science. They do better than logical explanations of verbal comprehension, right? But there was a famous research that the instructor went in to the testing room, and he gave the test saying that, oh, by the way, there were no gender difference found on the scores of this mathematics test. And guess what happened? The average score was basically the same between males and females. But the other instructor came in with a different group, saying that, oh, males scored higher than females with this math test. And guess what happened? Males scored higher than females after that was announced. So we are basically altered by the statement was made. Okay? So that's what it is.
Maybe females feel a little less confident after hearing that they don't do as well.
Exactly right. You got it. Okay? So the test, some tests like this Raven progressive matrices test was developed as a culture fit test to minimize cultural biases. So on the test of special ability, adolescents perform similarly until age 16 when males perform better. But if the difference is controlled for statistically, it goes away. Okay? If not, it introduces a gender bias to the test. Like you said, you just said it right. We're influenced by the input. And also, gender differences appear in the SAT, the most widely used college entrance exam. Males generally, that's the key word, score higher on the math portion, but in a comparison of grades in college mathematics classes, for males and females with the same SAT scores, females had better grades. Because of its importance in determining college entrance, the SAT should be structured so that it reflects mathematical ability. So it's not like one is better than the other. What is good? Like you are good at what area? And if so, then we can put you in the right place to begin with in the college. Like math, for instance. You might have better understanding of calculus, so maybe you start with calculus rather than developmental math. It's just different. Then, of course, Steinberg's componential intelligence, okay, defines intelligence achieving life's goals as well as success in school. So individual differences are due to the intellectual functioning of these components. So he came up with meta-components, which determines when more information is needed and if a particular strategy will work, as well as monitor progress. He's the one who developed triarchic intelligence. It's like like a triangle and 3 components. Okay, so we have performance components, which carry out procedures selected by meta components, and knowledge acquisition components acquire new information as needed, shifting through information and integrating relevant pieces into what is known. So it's like a deductive. What's the opposite? Deductive reasoning. What's the opposite, guys? You collect little pieces to make general conclusion. Was it inductive? What was the word? I have a tip of the tongue phenomenon right here. It's an opposite of deductive reasoning. What was the term, guys? It's Psych 101. That's all right. It will come back to me. And I will scream that word, okay, when it comes back. So Steinberg applied this analysis to analogies, which reveal that all ages use the same components, but spend different amounts of time on each. All right? Then Gardner's multiple intelligence. I like his theory the best because I believe the same way. Everybody is intelligent, but in a different way. So Gardner proposed multiple intelligences. So he defined intelligence as one's ability to solve problems as they arise, but expands the range of problems that may be used to study intelligence. Talents may also be considered as domains of intelligence. I completely agree with that. So he came up with 7 or 8 different forms of intelligence. The last one was added recently. That used to be 7, but now it's 8. So musical intelligence, meaning your potential professions can be musician, music teacher. I think musicians are so talented. Not everybody can be, like, let's say, who is Yo-Yo-Ma, the famous celloist? Can everybody can be like Yo-Yo-Ma? No, he has some intelligence there, the skills, right, abilities. Bodily kinesthetic, dancer, athlete, actor. Like famous ballerina. Can I be a ballerina like that, like her? No. Logical, mathematical, scientist, mathematician, teacher. Linguistic, writer, lawyer, interpreter, spatial artist, architect, landscape designer, interpersonal, understanding others, teacher, counselor, salesperson, interpersonal, understanding oneself, writer, poet, naturalist, botanist, chef, forester. So different types of intelligence. And it doesn't mean that you have only like musical. It might be interpersonal and spatial. It can be naturalist, interpersonal, and logical, mathematical. Different combinations too, right? So practical intelligence, street smart, is distinguished from the academic intelligence measured by tests. Intelligence tests are designed by others and problems are well defined with one right answer. Think outside of the box. That's psychology, right? There is no definite black-white answers. It's always gray areas. So practical intelligence involves discovering the problem and finding different approaches and solutions. That's what I try to do with my students too. Everybody is intelligent, but how can I help my students to achieve their goals? I try to see the differences, strengths, weaknesses, and then try to use different approaches, right? Also, information processing approach. This approach focuses on the processes by which information is encoded, retrieved, and utilized. It's like a memory chapter from Psych 101, okay? So many developmental processes show changes with age. Definitely. Not only age, but also the other factors. If you're married with children, all right, and if your work is more stressful with mentally ill patients because of the safety risks or safety issues, depends on the tasks too, right? I used to remember everything. My students tell me that I still remember their faces, names, but if I go to the grocery store now, I buy stuff. I always forget to buy something. Why is that? Because it's not that urgent. It's not like survival skills for me. It's not important. Yeah, if I forget to buy milk, that's when I can go back there next time or next day, right? And I forget because I prioritize stuff now because I'm multitasking all the time. So not only the age, but also environment, okay? The nature of the work you do too, okay? Automaticity is the ability to perform practiced cognitive functions without conscious attention. So you drive your car to come to Bunker Hill. You don't think which way you take. You automatically know because you have a cognitive map in your brain already. You know. Okay, you don't have to say, take right onto this street, then you take left onto this street. You don't think that way when you're driving to come to Bunker Hill anymore because you're used to it. You have a cognitive map already. And speed of processing too is the rate at which one or more cognitive operations can be performed. And working memory, that's the one we can train. Holds information briefly under 1 minute while further processing occurs. After working memory, we can put our information into long-term memory and we can retrieve when you need it. And if you don't do it, you forget because it's not important to be stored in your long-term memory. Okay, that's from chapter in Psych 101 class 2. But we can train that to hold the information longer than 30 seconds by like repeating the numbers or chunking it, or different ways of dealing with information. Okay? Encoding is a transfer of information from one form of memory to another. Strategies, activities to organize cognition to improve performance. I already told you that. So adolescents are more likely to use strategies as they are more aware of their thinking, called metacognition. Okay? Adults too. And reasoning, here we go, inductive reasoning. That's the one I was saying earlier. Reasoning improves during adolescence too. Inductive reasoning moves from the particular to the general. Like Sherlock Holmes, they take little clues and then come up with the conclusion. You are the one who committed this crime. But then he's very good at collecting piece of information. This thought process allows extrapolation from a single factor general rule. Deductive reasoning is the opposite, goes from the general to particular, checking a hypothesis by observation, general to specific. All cars have tires, then specific will be Honda Pilot has tires, Ford Taurus has tires, Mercedes-Benz have tires. You will be specific about some types of cars, okay? All right, so adolescents are able to use a systematic approach that works well in science. So they can analyze the situation, identify relevant variables, and discover the problem. That's great, but then that's not it. They tend to overthink about things, okay? Because they are still learning. They're experiencing it. So next they can form a strategy that will test combination of variables. Adolescents think in terms of possibilities too. Okay, but it's coming up soon. Adolescents also use strategies to improve their study skills too. They can recognize and direct their attention to what they don't know. Uses of language such as metaphor, irony, sarcasm, and satire are understood as adolescents are able to think in terms of hypothetical situations. All right. That's why, like some funny movies, right? They get it. Or even like SpongeBob. Adults can get some jokes, although kids love that show. But metaphors is there. Adolescents, adults can still enjoy because we understand the meanings of some jokes, right? Conversations between SpongeBob and the other characters, right? Okay. The ability to think abstractly about their own thoughts and the thoughts of others underlies egocentrism. Me, 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 me. Selfie. Right? They have to be egocentric to begin with. Otherwise, how do they understand themselves and then others, right? They have to have their own first. But adolescents may fail to distinguish their own concerns from those of others. They may feel that others think about them as much as they themselves do, and that's called imaginary audience. How many of you in high school days think that, oh my gosh, I have pimple. I feel like I don't want to go to school because I feel like everybody will be spotting on my pimple. Hello, nobody is watching your pimple. But that's the mentality they have. Or they have a nice shirt, but then they had little ketchup on it. And then she freaks out, oh my gosh, I have some stain on my nice shirt. Do you think other people are watching you? No, but that's how they feel. Others are always judging you. Or someone is whispering when you're passing by. You might think that they must be talking about me. That's not true, or that's not always true, right? But that's how they feel. Others are watching me, others are thinking about me, but it's imaginary. It's in their imagination. That's called imaginary audience, right? So imaginary audience may make them feel special. That relates to personal fable, meaning the feeling that they are unique and their experiences are not like those of others. No one can understand how I feel. You remember those days? Or let's say I don't get punished by police when I'm driving and typing because I'm special. Yeah? That's personal fable. Social cognition develops as adolescents become better at assuming another's perspective and coordinating it with their own. That relate to this better decision makings or worse decision makings, right? Okay. So doubt and skepticism also arise as adolescents realize that a truth may be only one interpretation of reality and that others are possible. And they become skeptical of knowing anything with certainty. So arguing is related to the ability to consider the multiple possibilities in a situation, and adolescents are good at it. Okay. Another term is called pseudo-stupidity with adolescents. They act like stupid, but they're not stupid. Like they know the obvious answer, but then like multiple choices, and they're like, it can't be this simple. There must be something going on. They tend to overthink, overanalyze things. That's stupidity related to doubt and skepticism. Okay? So that was chapter 4.